Hello everyone, I'm Man of Words, and if you're tired of the Bleak Watcher Getaway Artist combo on Prismatic Warlock like I am, then look no further than what I've cooked up. I took what is arguably the lackluster portion of the Warlock kit, their melees, and cranked it to 11. As you can probably tell in the gameplay, this build revolves around the Lightning Surge aspect, and with the help of the Prismatic Warlock kit and the seasonal artifact we currently have, this slide melee will be providing a plethora of buffs on demand. Lightning Surge is a Warlock aspect that reads, while sliding, activate your charged melee ability to blink forward, calling down lightning strikes that jolt targets as you rematerialize. By itself, this is a great aspect to use. It has no issue killing groups of red bars, and anything that doesn't immediately die from the attack will be jolted, allowing for chain lightning to strike the area and stun overload champions. If it does get the kill, Lightning Surge gives the benefits of being amplified, so the bonus mobility, slide distance, handling, reload speed, all that good stuff, especially the 15% damage resist from Speed Booster. We want to be able to use this melee as much as possible, so our charged melee is going to be the Arcane Needle. The reasoning behind this is just for the 3 melee charges, but it's still good to use normally for unraveling enemies, which adds another layer of potent ad clear. What's really going to make Lightning Surge excel is with the help from the new exotic class items in the Dual Destiny mission. I was fortunate enough to get the role of Spirit of the Necrotic and Spirit of Syntheseps on my Solipsism. The Spirit of the Necrotic applies a damage over time poison to any of our melees, charged or uncharged, and it lingers for 10 seconds or until the target dies. If that poison kills something, the poison spreads again to nearby enemies, reapplying the poison tick, and this cycle can rinse and repeat so long as there are adds to take the poison damage. Fun fact, the necrotic poison can synergize with the jolt from Lightning Surge. Every few ticks of the poison reactivates the jolt, making chain lightning strikes happen more often. Isn't that nice? One thing I will say about Spirit of the Necrotic is that the poison damage does not scale over time, unlike Necrotic Grips, which is kind of unfortunate, but that trade-off is worth it for it being able to run the next exotic trait, Spirit of Syntheseps, which buffs our melee damage by 165% when surrounded by 3 or more enemies within 15 meters. The combination of these two exotic traits makes our melees clear adds faster and easier, being able to compete in level-capped content, doing some serious damage to champions or any single target with high health. The second aspect in this build will be Feed the Void. No matter what I do on Prismatic Warlock, this is always glued onto me. Free Devour on ability kills, which heal us to full health and give back grenade energy on subsequent kills. And as long as we're slaying, we'll always be able to have our grenade up whenever we need it. So we'll need to choose one that complements this build. Now, I thought about the grenade long and hard, and the one I believe will be the most beneficial to this playstyle is Cold Snap, which gives us a form of crowd control. It can stun unstoppable champions on demand, the shatter damage, and it will help proc an important fragment that will make our slide melee stronger, which I will talk about soon. For class ability, you can use whatever you like. I personally like Phoenix Dive because it has a shorter cast animation and cooldown compared to the Rifts, and it saves me from getting knocked off the map or pulled from those stupid Strand Scions. Now let's go over fragments. I specifically picked these out of all the fragments we currently have available in the Prismatic subclass. I feel like these fragments truly enhance this build, but if you want to switch one out for another, feel free to do so. Our first fragment is going to be Facet of Dawn. We get Radiant on a melee hit, and on a melee kill, our allies get Radiant too when they're nearby. Radiant is a great buff, plus 25% weapon damage, and anti-barrier stunning capabilities. Next is Facet of Protection. You get plus 15% damage resist when surrounded by 3 or more enemies, which makes sense since we need to be surrounded to proc Spirit of Syntheseps. So those two synergize real well. And when we're Transcendent, guess what? Even more damage resist. Facet of Courage. This is what Cold Snap is going to help us with. Arcane Needle too. Any of our light-based abilities, aka Lightning Surge, will do plus 10% more damage against targets afflicted with darkness debuffs, aka Freeze and Unravel. Next is Facet of Purpose. When we pick up an Orb of Power, we gain an elemental buff based on our super. In this case, we're going for Woven Mail for an additional 45% damage resist, so that means our super is going to be Needle Storm. It's great for ad clear, it's great for single target damage, it's all around a solid super. Our last fragment will be Facet of Grace. Defeating targets with kinetic weapons grant bonus Transcendence energy. Also, kills with our super give nearby allies bonus Transcendence energy for themselves. We want to reach Transcendence as quick as possible with this build, because while we're Transcendent, our abilities do more damage, we get yet another form of damage resist, and we gain ability regeneration at an increased rate, which translates to more lightning surges, all of which can be extended from kills while Transcendent. Also, our Transcendent Grenade for Warlock is super useful, freezing Singularity. It applies a slow field which leads up to a freeze and suppressing blast at the end, so it's a great way to counter Overload and Unstoppable champions. Now you might be wondering, what kinetic weapon do we plan on using that fits well in this build? Like the final piece to a jigsaw puzzle, the kinetic weapon that ties everything together is none other than Monte Carlo. This weapon does so much for this build, it's insane. It's got melee energy back on hit, a chance to refill a full melee charge from kill, it's got Grave Robber and Swashbuckler built in, the Catalyst allows us to use the bayonet portion of the weapon when at 5 stacks of Markov Chain to get a huge chunk of melee energy back. Did I also mention the Monte Carlo melee can benefit from Necrotic Poison and melee damage bonus from Synthos? Oh yeah, it's strong. I swear, this auto rifle was made for this build. Now to go over the armor mods. On the helmet, I have on a Kinetic Siphon for Monte Carlo, Hands-On for super energy on melee kills, and since I only had one slot left due to my armor stats being the way they are, I opted to use Radiant Light. Since I play nearby teammates pretty often, might as well give them some armor charges when I super, and bonus Transcendence energy from Facet of Grace if my super gets kills. You don't have to do this though, especially if you're a solo player, you can use whatever third mod you'd like. Over on arms, we definitely want Heavy-Handed, which gives us an Orb of Power from a melee kill. This Orb of Power helps us achieve Woven Mail thanks to Facet of Purpose. Plus, in the seasonal artifact right now, Radiant Orbs gives us Radiant on Orb Pickup. This artifact perk isn't required per se, since we already have Facet of Dawn, but it doesn't hurt to have, especially when you need Radiant, but you don't have the melee charges at that moment. The other two armor mods on the arms are going to be Impact Induction and Focusing Strike to give us ability energy back when we use any of our charged melees. Chest piece can be whatever resist mods you like, depending on the activity you're doing. And I've been going back and forth with the leg mods. I currently have on Invigoration, Absolution, and Orbs of Restoration for more ability energy on Orb Pickup, but in hindsight, these really aren't needed. We are already getting so much melee energy back from Monte Carlo, and when we activate Transcendence, we're getting a ton of energy back passively. So you could definitely go the route of using Surge mods for whatever weapon you want, or Scavenger mods for your special and heavy weapons. Take your pick. Lastly, on the exotic class item, we're putting on Outreach and Distribution for ability energy from using our Phoenix Dive / Rift, and a powerful attraction to collect any nearby orbs. As far as stats go, realistically, you only need the tier 10 resilience with this build, because you don't need strength because of Monte Carlo, discipline isn't a big deal because of Devour, and recovery isn't super important since the class ability really doesn't do too much for the build. If I had to place everything in an order, I'd prioritize resilience first, then discipline, then maybe recovery or strength third. Like I said, it really doesn't matter that much, so take your pick. In the seasonal artifact, we can still add to this build with Radiant Orbs, as mentioned before. Galvanic Armor gives, yep, you guessed it, more damage resistance at plus 30% while we're amplified. Counter Energy is helpful for activities with champions in them. Shield Crush is very useful. When you have Woven Mail, Frost Armor, or a Void Overshield, your melee recharges 25% faster and deals 25% more damage. And while you're amplified or radiant, your grenade recharges and deals damage at the same rate. The grenade damage portion doesn't really matter for our Cold Snap, but everything else is extremely beneficial. Lastly, Transference makes our abilities do plus 10% more damage while Transcendent, and Weapon Final Blows while Transcendent refund Transcendence energy back once it ends, up to 50% from 20 kills. It's essentially the Phoenix Protocol for Transcendence. As far as weapons, the only weapon you should have on to make this build shine is Monte Carlo, obviously. The rest is fairly lenient. I currently have on Indebted Kindness since rocket sidearms are extremely overpowered, and my heavy is Edge Transit because, well, it's Edge Transit. Last but not least, here's the fashion for the build. Nothing too crazy, I'm just using the ornament set from the Season's Pass with the Sato Tribe shader from Black Armory. The gameplay loop is essentially use Lightning Surge into a group of 3 or more enemies to proc Synthoceps and Facet of Protection. Enemies become jolted and poisoned, and if that melee gets a kill, you become amplified and radiant, gaining extra damage resist and weapon damage. That kill also drops an orb from Heavy Handed. You pick it up, get Woven Mail, which in turn gives you melee regen and more melee damage. Your Monte Carlo is also juiced with Markov Chain times 5 and Radiant at that point, so shooting a couple of enemies will get that melee charge back. Or you can just hash out with the Bayonet, that's gaining the bonus melee damage from Synthoceps and Poison from Necrotic. You'll be able to throw Cold Snaps whenever you'd like with the help of Devour to freeze targets, follow that up with another Lightning Surge to add on Shatter damage, and Facet of Courage damage. There's Needle Storm Super, there's Transcendence. I mean, there's just so many moving parts to this build happening in the background, it's hard to keep track sometimes. One thing I like about this build is that you can apply Jolt, Poison, and Unravel at the same time onto a boss, for instance, to add passive damage over time on par, if not better, than Witherhoard or Anarchy, while you're using your heavy weapon. I haven't tested this out yet, comparing the numbers, but I wouldn't say it's a stretch to claim it's on the same level as those weapons. But what if you don't have the RNG to get the Necrotic Synthos combo, and you still want to try out this build? What exotic would you use then? Well, what I was using before acquiring the class item was Fellwinter's Helm. From a charged melee kill or finisher, surrounding enemies get hit with a 30% weaken debuff for X amount of seconds depending on the rank of enemy killed. This is very potent, and what you could do is switch out Facet of Dawn for Facet of Defiance, so you can benefit from the finisher part of the exotic. In this case, one finisher can weaken and sever everything around you if you have the Needlestorm super equipped. I really like using Fellwinters with this setup, but as soon as I got the roll on Solipsism, I immediately switched and now my melees hit way harder. And that about wraps it up. That is my Prismatic Warlock build. I've coined it as Palpatine's Poison, since we're shocking everything like Emperor Palpatine, leaving behind a trail of poison slowly killing everything around us. I mean, what more could you ask for in a build? We've got Jolt, Devour, Necrotic Poison, Synthoceps melee damage, Radiant, Amplify, Woven Mail, and an assortment of other damage resist, ability regen, and ability damage increases, all stemming from one melee, and you've got 3 charges of it. Definitely give this build a try, it's so fun and incredibly strong for a Warlock who is mostly known for their grenade builds. Letting the melee portion of their kit shine is quite refreshing. I'll let the rest of the footage play out. I'm Man of Words, take care.